Hello, pre-calculus students. In this video, we're going to be working through some application problems to solve, which we'll face numerous times throughout Unit 2. So this is where we're kind of applying the skills that we already know for how to solve equations in order to solve some more complicated situations. So we're going to start off with this problem. Know that during this video, I'm going to stop you a bunch to ask you what you think in the answers to these questions with our problem-solving framework this year. And that's because even though we're not in class, I do want you to be thinking actively about how you would go about solving this problem. So when I prompt you with an open-ended question, please take it seriously. Don't just put an empty space there to move on to the next question. That'll just result in you and I having a conversation about what actively watching a video should look like. So my first problem, the average of two real numbers is 41.125. Their product is 1,683. Find the two numbers. First, you want to ask yourself, what am I being asked to do? And the answer to that question is find the two numbers. So in the end, I'm asked to find two numbers. So my answer should have two numbers in the end. Now I want to list out what do I know. So read through at least these first two pieces of information. What do you know generally? Maybe you want to define a word like average or product, and you can tell me what those words mean. Go ahead. Okay, so I know that the average of the two numbers is 41.125, and I know that the product is 1,683. If I'm going to define these two words, hopefully you have an idea of what these two words mean in your head. When you see the word average, you're going to add your numbers together. And divide by the number of numbers you have. When I'm taking the product of numbers, I'm multiplying them. The third thing, so I'm going to just write in this question. The third question I want to ask is, what do I not know? What do I not know? And the answer to this is I don't know the two numbers. In order to solve this problem, I want to define two variables for these two unknown numbers. So I'm going to say that A is the first number, B is the second number. And I'm just defining a set of variables. You can pick your own set to solve. So now that we have all of this information up here, I want you to ask yourself, what can I try? How can you apply all of the information that we've gathered to figuring out these two numbers? Go ahead and think. Okay, so you may have listed out a couple of different things or thought of a couple different things. Some things that I could try. I can try setting up equations. I could try guess and check to solving these two problems. I could try figuring out two numbers that multiply to 1,683. Maybe you came up with a couple different things that you could try. We're going to go with this first one, setting up equations. So I've got two pieces of information. I've got the average and I've got the product. And I've got my set of variables A and B. Let's start with my product. So my product, I know I'm multiplying my two numbers together. So that's A times B. And my product is equal to 1,683. The second piece that I know is the average. So when I add the two numbers together, so I add A and B, A plus B, and I divide by the number of numbers. So I'm dividing this by how many numbers I have. Well, I have two numbers, A and B. So I'm going to divide this by 2. That's my average. I'm going to set that equal to 41.125. Okay, so I've set up my equations. Now I've got to think about how I can solve these two equations. How can you solve for what A and B are? Hopefully a switch clicked in your head that this is actually just a system of equations. So this could be x and y, and I need to solve for one of them and see if I can plug in and solve for the other. So in this equation, I'm going to solve for A. So I'm going to divide both sides by B to get rid of it. So I get A equals 1,683 over B. Now that I know what A equals, wherever I've got an A over here, I can plug that in. So I'm going to replace my A with 1,683 over B plus B divided by 2 is equal to 41.125. Once I get to this step, I just need to solve it out. So in order to get a common denominator here to add these two, I need to multiply B by B over B. So I will be left with 1,683 plus B squared over B, and that's being divided by 2 is equal to 41.125. I'm not really enjoying this 2 over here, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of it. So I'll be left with 1,683 plus B squared over B is equal to 82.25. Okay, so now I've still got to solve for B. I've got a couple different ways that I could do this using the methods that we've learned in class over the last 2 days. I could multiply by B to get this over out to the top. Let's see what happens when I do that. So multiply by B on both sides. I'm going to end up with 1,683 plus B squared equals 82.25B. Now I'm starting to look like I've got a quadratic. So if I get everything on one side and set the equation equal to 0, minus 82.25B minus 82.25B, I've got this nice quadratic equation of B squared minus 82.25B plus 1,683 equals 0. What are the ways that I know how to solve quadratics algebraically? Hopefully, you are reminded either of factoring or of using the quadratic formula. I don't think I can factor this out pretty easily because I've got a decimal in here. So instead I'm going to solve this using the quadratic formula. Go ahead and you do this off to the side as well. Solving your quadratic formula, so you're going to plug everything in. This will simplify to a positive 82.25 plus or minus the square root of, this will simplify down to I think a nice 33.0625, which when you take the square root of that, you'll end up at 5.75. And this will all be over 2. From there, I'm going to simplify this equation, so I'll have 82.25 plus 5.75, and I'll divide that by 2. When I do that, I'll end up at 44. When I take 82.25 and subtract 5.75 divided by 2, I end up at 38.25. And those should be my two numbers for what b equals. So now I want you to ask yourself, do you have all of your info? Do you have all of your info? And your answer should actually be no. So I've got two numbers, 44 and 38.25, but right now I'm saying they're both equal to b. And I need to figure out what a is. So take a moment and think, how can I figure out what a is? Hopefully something sparked in your head and you thought, oh, well, I can plug one of these numbers back into here, and I should get what a equals, since I set this equation up for what a is equal to. So let's go ahead and do that with both of them. A is equal to 1,683 over 44, and a is equal to 1,683 over 38.25. Hopefully this will bring some clarity. Go ahead and simplify those two fractions. Okay, so something kind of weird happens when we simplify these. When I divide this 1,683 by 44, I end up at 38.25. When I divide 1,683 by 38.25, I end up at 44. So these are actually going to be the two values, 38.25 and 44, that I'm going to use for a and for b. I can assign a or b to either one of these numbers. It actually will not matter. So I could say that a equals 38.25 and b equals 44. And those are the two numbers that I've solved for in the system of equations. So do you have all your info at this point? Yes. I've got my two numbers. Now I've got to go back and ask myself, does my answer make sense? In which case, I can actually use these two equations that I came up. When I take the average of these two numbers, does it equal 41.25? When I multiply these two numbers, does it equal 1,683? Go ahead and check your work. Do these two numbers make sense in the end? Hopefully you got yes. So when I take 38.25 times 44, I will end up at 1,683. And when I add these two numbers, so 38.25 plus 44, and divide them by 2, so taking the average, I will also end up at 41.125. Own problem like this, so the average of two numbers is 39.625. One number is 1,500 times the reciprocal of the other number. Find the two numbers. I'm going to ask you the same set of questions as you solve this problem through. Go ahead and copy it down. And I want you to identify, what are you being asked to do? Now I want you to list out, what do you know? What do you know? I want you to recognize the things that you do not know. So what do you not know when it comes to solving this problem? I'm going to define a couple things up here to just help you. So average, again, that's when we add the numbers and divide by the number of numbers that we have. When I see times, that means to multiply. And when I see the reciprocal, if I've got some number, we'll call it x. The reciprocal of x is just 1 over x. Same thing, just another example, if I've got the number 3. The reciprocal of 3 is 1 over 3. So reciprocal means to take the number and put it under 1. Hopefully these will help you. I want you to list out what you can try. What are the things that you can try to solve this problem? Go ahead and give it a shot. I'm going to check in with you after you're done with just the correct answer and correct work up here. To see a walkthrough of this problem, you're going to click on the video link that will pop up in just a second off to the side. Otherwise, we're going to keep going through a couple problems like this on Thursday or Friday in class. So be prepared to go through the problem-solving process and solve a lot of complicated problems. I know this was a hard problem to go through on your own, so thank you for giving it a shot.